here with one of my most favorite human beings on the planet, and somebody that I have known for, I've been thinking about this, I have known you for over 20 years.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that you might be, in Nashville now, you're probably the person that I have known the longest, besides any family members that come visit. I was thinking about, yeah, we have lots to talk about, and we've known each other for a long time. But let's talk about what you're up to and what you're doing. So Marc is this is Marc Rogers, by the way, who is an incredible musician. I've seen him in so many different facets in the music industry. He's a composer as well. He grew up. Did you grow up in Vancouver, right?
No, I didn't. I grew up all over the place. A bunch of small towns. I mean, I could list them all, but some of them don't exist anymore. They were all small mining towns because my dad worked in the mining industry. So. Oh
wow! Were your parents musical?
Vaguely. My dad was a huge jazz fan. He had. I mean, this is probably going to be a rambling discussion.
It's great. We got lots of time, my friend.
Great.
And the coffee. There's extra coffee sitting.
Yeah, this coffee is fantastic. Yes. It's definitely gonna help. My dad started his sort of, I guess, work career in the Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, and then when he was done with his enlistment period, he went to work for, at the time, what was the Distant Early Warning Line, the DEW line, which doesn't exist anymore, but at the time it was a ring of radar stations above the Arctic Circle that would detect if the Soviets, at the time, if there was going to be a missile launch, it couldn't go over the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean because the missiles didn't have the range. So they had to launch over the North Pole. And so this ring of radar stations was basically, as soon as the missiles came over the North Pole, they figured, well, we'd be able to give North America a half-hour warning and everyone could get under their desks and do all the things that, yeah, I know.
That's scary.
So my dad was up and in the middle of nowhere, and as he's told me, one of the things that sort of helped him stay sane in this really remote workspace was he had a vinyl record collection of his jazz albums, and he would take super good care of them. I still have some of the records he had up there, and they're still in mint condition. I mean,
It's amazing.
I don't take them out unless I have to because they're pretty precious to me. But
I can imagine.
Yeah. So he was a huge jazz fan. My mom played piano in church and sang, and neither one of them pursued it professionally. My dad played trumpet in the Air Force for a little while. I've got some cool pictures of him playing his trumpet in uniform and stuff. It's very, yeah.
I mean, they sound pretty musical to me.
Yeah. It definitely music was around.
You're surrounded by it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they got me into piano lessons when I was 6. That was one of the first things. It's like, you are taking piano.
So they drove you kind of.
Absolutely, yeah. At first, and then I got really into it, obviously, and then they didn't have to anymore.
Did you catch fire pretty quickly with it?
I did, although it's funny, I played almost every instrument except the one I ended up actually playing. And, I played piano for years and years and years. Didn't get really that good at it. Played guitar, didn't get that good. Played saxophone, played trumpet, played clarinet for a minute. Tried all these different instruments through high school, and it just never... And then when I was living in Timmins, Ontario, of all places.
I was through Timmins recently, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, me too. I was back for the first time in a while, and it has not changed a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it looks like it's a throwback for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember the first time I ever played music with people in a real situation was I met some guys at the high school I was going to. One of them played guitar, one of them played drums, and they heard that I played keyboards. I had a DX7, which at the time was a brand new synth, and barely knew how to use it.
I think that thing sounded old when they made it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Even when it came out, I was like, what is this?
Yeah. I feel like it's 20 years past its due date.
Oh yeah. When it came out.
Yes, when it came out.
So I brought that over to their place, and I had no idea what it was doing. It was just these. I wish I had a recording of it because I'm sure it was just awful. But it was the first time I'd ever just played music that wasn't written down or wasn't. It was just make something up. And what I noticed was just instinctively as we're playing along, just whatever 2-chord jams we were doing, my left hand, I kept just wanting the left hand to be louder and louder. I was like, something's missing down here. I don't know why, but that was my instinct was. I would have been 14 or 15, had no idea what I was doing. So I remember going to the high school music teacher when I was 15 and saying, I just played with these guys, and what instrument normally does that? Because I had no idea. I was completely clueless. And he said, oh, that'd be a bass. I'm like, what's this bass you talk about? And they had this gorgeous, I've seen pictures of it with myself, and I wish I had known. It was this gorgeous 70s P bass that they had, natural blonde, maple neck. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, we've got this. No one's using it. Why don't you sign it out for the summer and just take it home and play with it? And I had played a little bit of guitar, and so I understood the sort of, what the first 3 or 4 frets were and what the 4 open strings were. And I just started playing by ear, playing along with records that I was listening to. And that was just a revelation for me, because up until then I would play music that was written and then I would listen to stuff. And if I couldn't find the sheet music for it, I was like, well, okay, I guess you can't play that song on piano or whatever. And suddenly it was like, oh, you mean you can just hear something and then figure out what it is and play it? Wow, this is great. This is the best thing ever. And from that was a game changer, because then I had that bass in my hand pretty much all the time for the rest of high school. I remember grade 11 and 12, I moved to Vancouver partway through grade 11. And of course, went to Handsworth, which was a moderately cliquey school.
Yes.
And I was this, this hick from small towns, had no idea, this is in North Vancouver.
Wow, I didn't know that you went to Handsworth. I didn't know you went to North End.
Well, it's funny because at that point I was already so serious about music. I would just I remember the first part of grade 11, I had started my habit of ditching class to just go practice. So I would show up for the first 5-10 minutes of class, and then I would go to the bathroom, making air quotes here, and then I would just go wherever no one was around, either the music room or the hallway or whatever, and I would just have my bass and I'd just be practicing. And then I'd go back for the last 5-10 minutes of class, and then, next class, same thing. And then that carried on. When I moved to Vancouver, of course, I had no friends, didn't know anybody, so I thought, oh, great, more practice time. So I would,
I actually it was an obsession thing.
Oh, it was crazy. I remember I had one of those little practice amps that you could plug headphones into, and there was a student lounge in Handsworth, and I literally just left it in a corner, never moved it, just plugged it in and left it in a corner next to a sofa, and literally would go to about the first 5-10 minutes of a class and then leave, go to the student. I'm sure that everyone knew I was doing this. I thought I was being incredibly sneaky, but I'm sure my teachers just thought I was an idiot, or I don't know what they thought I was doing. But yeah, I would literally just go and practice all day, and then show up at classes so I didn't fail, basically. Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about the fact that you started out from kind of a theoretical place, like with the sheet music and the reading, because that's such a that's a rare place that I think a lot of people get started, especially somebody like with what you do in your day-to-day kind of world. Is that how you think about it still? Like, do you feel like that was your imprint, basically?
I did for a long time. I would still very much learn by rote, and even my ear was always my weakest point. I mean, I remember my first year of college, I decided, very quickly, obviously, that I was going to go into music. So I went to Capilano College in Vancouver. And I remember my first year of ear training class, I thought, I'm going to nail this. I did really great at the ear training at Royal Conservatory, and not realizing it's a completely different thing. And I very quickly realized that compared to a lot of the people at the school, my ears were awful. Like, I couldn't reliably hear. If you changed keys, I suddenly could get thrown. Is that a major chord or a minor chord? I can't tell. I just had this incredible weakness. I still feel like my ears are the weakest part of my playing. I still always feel like I'm playing catch up with that.
It's interesting when you come from that theoretical place.
Yeah.
And that's not the first place that the ear thing is the thing that you exist in first. I think one thing I wanted to dive in with you on that topic is the idea of kind of, when I remember seeing you play, I mean, you have chops like nobody's business. Like you can rip around, but I think,
well, that's what happens when you don't pay attention in high school.
Well, yeah, yes, and the obsession begins. Yeah. And then, but it's interesting because when you coincide that with the theory, then you can kind of get there's a tunnel vision that starts happening. I mean, do you feel that you existed in that for a while? Like the chop thing was a thing? That you
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was, I think the chops and the, I definitely, my 20s, I look back at the way I played then, and I think it was really technical and really, it was a lot of, it was a lot of connecting licks, you know what I mean? And I think that was all sort of me. I learned a way to sort of bluff around the fact that I didn't think my ears were that good. And then eventually what happened was, actually when I was at North Texas State, we were there at the same time. And that's something we'll probably get to. But that was when I had the big awakening of like, no, I just have to work on my ears now. Yeah. And I think that was probably the single of all the ways that school was an ass kicking. That was the biggest way where I was like, okay, enough of this. I'm sick and tired. Like I could, because it was that thing where if I had a chart in front of me, I could play through it no problem because I knew, oh, well, this lick will sound great over this chord, and then I can merge it with this lick that'll sound great over this chord. But it wasn't. There was an emotional connection that was missing, and I was seeing it in other people, and I wasn't seeing it in my own playing, and that was what really. That's mostly what I worked on at North Texas was upright bass because that's what I was there for, and just getting my ears in shape. And that's when I teach now. It's funny. I teach the exact opposite way from what I learned, which is I start off with put the book away, put the pencil and paper away. We're going to learn this by ear. We're going to learn this whole thing by ear. Whatever it is that you're interested in, we're going to learn it by ear. We're going to lift it. We're going to find out what the notes are. It's going to take forever. It's going to be incredibly frustrating. You are going to want to quit. And we're going to get it, and then we're going to get it under our fingers. We're going to learn how to play it well, figure out how to make it sound right. Then we're going to write it down. So I put the part that I started with at the end because I think it is the least important, honestly. I feel like being able to have ideas that are good and being able to hear what they actually are instead of just going, well, I have this idea, but I have no earthly way to get it from my head to my instrument or to a piece of paper. I feel like that's the most important thing. Having the ideas, first of all, and then being able to execute them that's the whole thing. And the way I teach reading now and the way I think about reading is not this note is here. Like I see a B written and I put my finger here. I look at it and I hear a B and then I play a B. So I feel it, and that's been basically most of my adult life has been trying to get to that place from where I started. So, yeah.
I mean, man, that's amazing. That I think it's valuable that you have that skill, but I'm totally with you. I think the way that we communicate, the way that the world is going with communication through music it's less paper and it's mostly through audio.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely useful to be able to read.
Yes.
And I've been getting that the past couple of years. I've been getting my number system reading together in Nashville numbers, which now I actually use. I think it's a brilliant system for notating
The catch with that though is when you're in those sessions is that when a lot of the times you'll pop in and it'll be a songwriting demo that you're listening to, and you're immediately using your ears to write down the numbers. So you're not getting, most of the time you're not getting handed a chart.
No, that's what I love about it. It's such a great shorthand for capturing something on paper quickly. So that you can sort of offload the basic memory part onto the piece of paper and then focus on just playing. You can, but again, my goal always when I'm looking at even a numbers chart is not to go we're in C, so I'll play a C. It's to hear a C, to hear an F, to hear an A minor. And, it's funny. I know a lot of people are probably listening to this going, well, of course, what else would you do? But when you come from
I can think of 10 off the top of my head right now that are friends, and that's the way they look at it.
Of course. And I feel like that's the best way.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of trying to get to the point where that's all I do. Like it's always coming back to a sound, no matter which definitely was not what I did in my 20s.
So are you listening? Because I'm with you. Like I was a theoretical nerd.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I had to work on that, and I bullshitted my way through chords too by playing fast. I totally.
Well, you did it great, man. I remember
every single day.
At some point, we got to talk about the first time we met because that was it was a special day for me.
I bullshitted my way through that. But yeah, the idea that do you hear roots or do you hear the chord itself?
Well, that's the thing is that I'm trying to always hear the chord,
okay.
and then. Now, like something I'm really focusing on now is when I'm on a session, I'm trying to really hear voicings that different people are playing and how they interact. Because I find that and again, because my ears are still the weakest part of my game, I'm not always successful. But I find that when you start really dialing into that, first of all, you get ideas like nobody's business for what to play, but it also informs your choice of things like with bass, a lot of times you are trying to stick close to the root if you're doing your job. And so one of the ways you can sort of change up the flavor or the color of that is by what register you're playing in. And I feel like now that I'm getting to the point where I can hear, okay, that guy over there is playing this voicing and she's playing this voicing, and together, so if I jump right up in here, this is where I am with relation to what they're playing. And that's going to sound cool. Whereas if I go down here, it's going to be too much too soon, and it doesn't give me anywhere to build the chorus because they're both shifting down for that section to these voicings. So now when they do that, I'm going to drop down here, and then I can throw this color tone in because it works well with, it turns it into this voicing, and and of course,
it's a beautiful way of looking at it. I love that.
It's just I mean, when you get to work with people like we do that can hear stuff that I'll probably never be able to hear. It can get discouraging, but I feel like that's just the goal, is to just get my ears better and better and better and better.
Well, what's funny about the way that you just explained that is I think your brain and my brain are very similar in that respect of we have to look at it from all angles and process why that's happening so that we can be inside of it.
Yeah.
Whereas they're just doing that naturally.
Yeah.
And,
you're right.
I have to be like, okay, well, he's going to go here and I'm going to go there, and this is the game plan. It's like, okay, 3, 2, 1, break.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like it's always like I mean, I speak for myself, but someone who's coming at it from more of, I guess, a left-brained way back in the day. It's always a question of trying to get that right brain to do its thing, that's what I would think of as instincts. Like the way I learned how to play walking bass in jazz was by just transcribing a ton of Ray Brown and Paul Chambers and Ron Carter and Oscar Pettiford and just my favorite people. And what you start seeing is oh, there's all these different ways to get, but then you sort of move past that, and it starts becoming an instinct. Like, here's where I am, here's where I want to be, and you can sort of just, it's like walking from point A to point B, pardon the pun. When you're, if you're outside and you say, I want to go there, you can see, oh, well, there's a branch blocking the way, so I just got to go around it. And you don't have to think about that. You just do it by instinct. And I feel like that's how I'm trying to think of music is, sort of trying to bypass using the left part of your brain when you're practicing to develop your instincts so that when you're playing, it doesn't have to get involved, or it gets involved as little as possible, and that's just, that's the work of a lifetime, and again, we all know people that are more talented than I am, by thousands of them.
There's nobody more talented than you, Marc Rogers.
That's absolutely not true. This is my point. Is there are people that just have that ability. I mean, there's a drummer. Have you ever done any work with Lionel Lewis in Toronto?
I have. Yeah, he's amazing, incredible. Yeah. I've never worked in the studio with him before. But, yeah.
I've done a lot of stuff with him. I'm really lucky that he's someone I get to play with when I'm back in Toronto a lot. And it's you really have to learn to let go of your ego when you're working with someone like that, because he's a fantastic, besides being an astonishingly good drummer, he plays a lot of instruments really well. He's a great bass player.
Oh, really?
He's fantastic. But the other thing about him is that the gap between hearing something, responding to it, and having it come out is milliseconds. It's almost like he knew it was coming. It's so fast. Like I've seen him play with he sat in with Pat Metheny at a Jazz Lives thing at Kerner Hall, and you could see Pat would go to do something and Lionel would just immediately be on the right page. And there were a couple times Pat just turned and looked at him. It's like, how are you doing that? It's
kidding. Wow.
Well, and there's you see when you get to work with people that have been doing it that long. I mean, he's been playing since he was 3. And I mean, he's just one guy. There's so many people that are that good now. But the thing I really notice about him is that the processing time is almost non-existent. It's just everything's, his ears are amazingly huge and hearing everything that's going on. He's able to know exactly what it is, come up with a great idea that would go with it, and play it in the span of time that it just seems like it's instant. And that's my goal. Like whether I ever get there or not, probably not. But that's the whole point of this music thing, is that you never quite get where you're aiming at.
Well, I love the idea that's the whole. We talked about this on the podcast quite a bit, where the idea of in a practice time, in a practice session where you're not being creative, where you are working that left side of your brain so that you have more tools to pull from your toolbox, whether you're producing or whether you're doing whatever it is you're doing. I remember our friend Chad Makala saying that when I was a kid. He said you practice and practice and practice so that when you're playing a solo, you can think about what you're having for lunch the next day.
Yeah.
Like you just don't want to be, and that's where you're talking about that emotion coming out.
Yeah, because then it's no longer this note will sound good with this chord. It's wow, the thing that just happened immediately triggered this feeling in me, and the response to that feeling is this, and I'm going to play it right now.
Yeah.
And that's when you're especially improvising, that is a lot more to the forefront. I mean, there are some gigs where you're literally just playing a predetermined part. And then it's a question of, okay, well, how do you make that musical? It's
feel emotionally.
Yeah, like you really focus on the time feel and the tone and all of the other things, and use it as an opportunity to sort of just zone out onto that, and
yeah, I don't. You can definitely, when you listen to certain people, you can hear them thinking.
Yeah, and it's not really that appealing unless I mean, it's appealing to people who find that process interesting, but that's usually other musicians.
True.
The average person that doesn't have that sort of a perspective just hears the sound and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like there's no feeling that it creates, and so they don't respond to it because they don't know how. And my thing is that I'm always trying to make, no matter what kind of music it is, I always want someone who doesn't know anything about that music to still at least have it capture their attention for as long as possible, emotionally. And that if you do that, I think you're doing it right.
I would agree with that.
And it's way easier said than done.
and it's I love hearing that I love hearing you say out loud too, that it's, like you're thinking about how somebody could be interpreting it on the other side. It's not affecting what you're doing, but it's a part of the process. It's not, and it can get a little, too, you're self-aware.
Yeah.
So to speak,
Yeah.
People, the thinkers tend to be the ones that also are the ones that just barge ahead and don't really care about how it's being perceived on the other side as well.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that.
Well, I think it's important because I think that if you're making music, it's always, unless you literally are just at home and are not recording yourself.
Yeah.
That's a very personal, private
Pleasing
thing. And
yourself.
And you can do whatever you want, and that's great. And we, that it's great to have that relationship with music too. But any other time, if you're recording yourself, or if you're playing in public in any context, then I think it's irresponsible not to take the fact that people are listening to this. Now, you can't control their reaction to it necessarily. All you can do is keep in mind that they're there and that there are people who, and ideally it should be a form of communication. Depending on the circumstance, it may or may not work. And you can't get bummed out if people don't listen to your music, like especially if you ever do any corporate events, because people aren't there to take in music. The music is a background function, and I don't do a lot of that stuff anymore, kind of by choice. But when I do, it's usually with people that have had or have a pretty good career. Yeah. And you'd think people would want to check this out, but they are not. They're there to network. They're there to talk.
They're too busy partying and drinking.
Yeah,
I've been there, done that.
Yeah, so I find that like you can't take that personally. You just have to go, okay, well, you still have to try to, and then what I'll do is I'll just look around, and if I see like one table of people that's really checking it out, it's like, okay, you're my guys, you're my table. I'm focusing on you. But then ideally you're playing somewhere where everybody's listening, and then it's really like, okay. I feel like my ideal situation for live shows is to sort of take the whole audience, be like, all right, everybody, we're all here. We're all in this together. Let's go. Let's go somewhere together, and
it could be 5 people. It could be 100 people. It could
exactly.
Be,
it could be 7,000, whatever. Like, let's all go. Let's have a field trip.
Yeah. And,
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And you just keep trying to do that better, I think, and that's a career.
There are so many different fascinating listening environments, that we've all existed in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been to those. They spend hundreds of thousands sometimes bringing these artists in for these corporate events, and it's like, and you're right, there's just people just hooting and hollering and being stupid. It doesn't matter. Like you could be, just a wedding band, or you could be a #1 selling artist, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, I remember reading I forget who it was that wrote. I was reading a book by someone, and they were talking about being at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I think during the Clinton administration, and they had Ray Charles playing after all the speeches were, and then as soon as Ray Charles started playing, the whole room was just blah 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 blah, and it's like you'd think, wow, I mean, Ray Charles is right there playing for you, for a relatively small room, and people, they didn't pay attention. So you sort of have to, I'm sure Ray Charles didn't take that personally. You know what I'm saying? Like, So I just aim for that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta I guess you just get in your space in your head, and maybe there was that one person in the front row. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting that how that dynamic affects you as a player up on stage as well.
Oh yeah,
like it's an energy thing for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it could be one person versus it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just always. I think it's easy, especially. I mean, it takes a certain amount of confidence to be able to go. Okay, I'm gonna try to connect with you guys emotionally, even though I have no idea who you are, and I'm gonna try to go on this journey with you, and through the music, I'm gonna try to bring you guys to a place where maybe you forget about stuff that's bugging you for a couple hours, or it makes you think of something that you hadn't thought of before, or who knows? I mean, who knows what's going through people's minds? You can't know that, but. I feel like as long as you make an honest attempt, if you walk away, even if it doesn't work, you can walk away going, well, better luck next time.
Yeah. Well, and if let's transition into studio stuff, because I want to pick your brain and nerd out on like as a bass player in a studio session.
Absolutely. I mean, now you're not, this is my favorite thing to do. So now we're
well, we've already kind of you dove into it a little bit with where you feel that you exist inside of a song and how you build to different places, but. I've been super obsessed with the new Rustin Kelly album because it's brilliant. And it's so simple. Mm-hmm. And the bass stuff in it is what I find really fascinating about it, because there are a lot of, every chorus, every chorus or every verse. I mean, it can be as simple as a 1 to a 4.
Sure.
But the way that the bass player is moving to it and where he's putting, where the root is. The 1/3s that could pop up, all that stuff. And I'm also fascinated with the John Mayer records with the same thing.
Yeah.
He's brilliant with that. And a lot of the time he's playing bass on some of those things too, because he's hearing it and that's what he wants. And it's great. And you have to kind of dive in. And to me, it takes many listens to a record before you're noticed, because I'm not a bass player.
Yeah.
For you, I'm sure you're hearing it right away.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
Honestly. That was again, part of my problem in the 20s is that I would buy a record and be like, oh, the bass on this isn't that good. And then I wouldn't, could be a record that now would be one of my favorite records. Mm-hmm. Back then it was like, well, the bass isn't that interesting, so I'm going to move on.
Yeah, you get hyper-focused.
A lot of great records, the bass isn't that interesting, and that's why they're great records. So,
but there are still things that if they're not good, like to me, if it's bad lyrics, it's just like I'm out.
Exactly.
Like I'm checking out. Like if the bass is bad, it's like you can get, if the lyrics are cool and the performance is cool. Yeah, but there are definitely deal breakers still that exist, at least for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure for you as well. But the bass can definitely get away with a lot more.
Yes.
But so when you're
thank God.
Because you can get by. I mean, you can just.
Oh yeah.
It's very simple to make a simple bass part.
Yeah, and sometimes anything more than that is not the best thing for the song. And again, I think that's just a natural thing that happens as you do this, especially for a living, and you get older. You start realizing that it doesn't. My part doesn't really matter unless like the best case is that no one notices what I did, and they just focus on the song. That means I did a good job. The worst case is that my part distracts from the message of the song or overwhelms it, or, it is somehow, what's the word? Distracting, I think is the word. Like that's what I never want to do. Like it should always complement it. And there might come sometimes it's like, oh yeah, there's a moment where nothing else is happening and it's appropriate for the bass to step forward and do a little cool thing to go, oh, that was neat. Now back to the thing I was really enjoying.
Do you ask for permission to do that, or do you just do it?
I don't ask for. I think I really believe that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So
I dig that. Try it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. To me, that's. I mean, we're gonna talking about session sort of etiquette. Mm-hmm. I feel like if it's the situation where I'm doing an overdub session and it's just about getting a bass part, I'll throw stuff like that out, and if it's not appreciated, they'll let me know. And if it is, it's like, oh yeah, do something like that, but maybe more like this or something. And it's just in general, I feel like my job is to understand the role of bass as well as I can in as many genres as I can, as many styles as I can, so that I can sort of bring ideas that the artists
access your toolbox for sure.
Well, exactly, and I feel like that's my job. Is that like if every situation is different. Sometimes they have a very strong idea of what they want on bass, and then my job is to either come up with an idea that I think is better and suggest it, or just execute their idea like a bass player would. Sometimes
read the room and figure out which is appropriate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of room reading going on.
Yeah.
And if you're in a situation where you're trying to cut, 6 songs in 3 hours,
good point.
I'll just go for the most conservative, safe idea that supports the song, unless I'm asked to do something more flashy, and then I'll reach into the toolkit. But if it's an overdub session where we're crafting a bass part, I'll often throw those ideas out as they come to me, and then, take the rejection if it's not appropriate.
That's cool. Now, do you feel that you're always in that space, or do you need to feel like you're in a safe environment to be able to do that?
I less and less as I get older and my resume gets longer, honestly.
I was going to say, I mean, with what you've done, you've earned the right to do that, and you're there because you're Marc Rogers. So I could see that would be a thing.
Really appreciate that. Thanks, man. But yeah, and I feel like it's just always a question of making sure that none of it is coming from my ego.
Yeah.
It's not like I gotta say this. It's like, I think this is a cool thing for the song.
Yeah.
And I think when you offer things in that context, because there are a lot of popular songs that have very busy bass parts, right? So it's not like you're automatically sabotaging the song. It's just you have to use your judgment and say, well, this is what in my head, this sounds cool. Here's what it sounds like in the real world. And, then if someone says it's a cool idea, but it's not right for the song, you just have to be very egoless and go, cool. How about this? How about this? How about this? You got ideas 1 through 10. And if all 10 of them are not what they're looking for, you got to have ideas 11 through 20, 21 through 30, blah, 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 until you find the thing that's right. Yeah. That everyone feels like, oh, that gives me the feeling that I want this song to give me, And sometimes people have an idea that isn't a bass idea and they're trying to get me to do it. And I'll try to find a way to either adapt it and make it work. Sometimes I have to just say, I honestly don't think that's a bass thing. I think that's, especially if you're coming, I do a fair bit of sessions for EDM guys who don't always I did a session for this one DJ who does a lot of stuff in Europe. He's very popular. And he had this part and he was trying to sing it to me, and I was trying to get what he was throwing down. And it wasn't, no, that's not it. That's not it. And then finally at one point he sort of said, something like a Nile Rodgers part. I'm like, oh, you want a guitar player? Yeah. And I suggested a guitar player, and they brought the guy in. It's like, yeah, that was perfect. So, he was hearing a guitar type thing, but thinking it was bass, and then trying to get me to do it on bass. And of course that doesn't work. So you also have to be willing to say, that's not something that this instrument really does, after you've tried to make it work. So.
Yeah. And that's an ego thing too.
Yeah. You have to be willing to say, I'm not your guy. And again, I feel like as long as it's always offered in the service of what makes the song better, what's going to make you happier when you're mixing and mastering this thing, then usually the response is positive, because that just shows that you're on the same page as the people who.
And the trust. I mean, that you built the trust with the artist. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know, and I mean, rightly or wrongly, that stuff, it is easier to be that kind of collaborative once you have a few miles on your career. You know what I mean? Because
there's a lot of variables. There's miles in your career, and then there's you got to pay your rent, or you got to eat.
Yep.
There's a lot of different things there that that if you don't live in that fear, which again, I've talked with a lot of people in your chair right there about that. It's like people that live in that fear of it's got to be me, it's got to be me. And it leads to so many bad things in this year. You're doing a dance. You walk in there, and a lot of times you've never met the person, and you're doing a dance, and you're feeling them out. And there's so many opportunities for you to shut down and not, what you're saying, service that song.
It's very much like being a craftsman, where you're being brought in. And sometimes, if you're a very skilled, let's say, woodworker, sometimes you're being brought in to do some sort of really intricate, custom designed thing that is going to take a lot of back and forth, a lot of experimentation, a lot of collaboration. But then when you find the thing, everyone's really happy, and you've done something that brings you a lot of prestige and a lot of that. Sometimes you're just being brought in to make a table, and if you try to make the table over ornate or over complicated, it doesn't work. And you've superimposed your ego on this very simple task that you could have accomplished in a day.
Beautiful analogy. I love that.
Well, it's the way I really think about it. I mean, there's the session thing is the dance, as you put it. That's a great way to put it. I feel like the dance is sort of between the artist side, because you are trying to bring in creative ideas and a creative spirit, but there's also a craftsman thing where you're not pleasing your own muse, you're trying to please somebody else's. Yeah. So
And that's not always communicated as well as it could be.
No.
And sometimes they don't even know what that muse is.
No, of course not. And I feel like that's where it's my job to have sort of, as much as possible, be like a bass historian. So you've got this, okay, well, if you're saying Motown, this is the first way I think about it. And then as we go along, I realize, oh no, you actually mean like a 70s New York studio thing. You're just thinking of it as Motown because whatever, or just being able to think, oh, you mean something like this, and that's why I have, so many electric basses and so many. I bring as many options as I can physically bring to the studio. Whenever I have a session, I'll bring a synth bass, I'll bring a couple uprights, as many electrics as I can fit in the car. Or if I have the luxury of getting cartage.
You say you're going to love Nashville because there's beautiful cartage here.
I know that the Toronto scene is a lot more sort of self
DIY.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So like I feel like there's a reason for that besides the as many effects processors as I can bring. I bring a really nice preamp that does a lot of different things, a couple different compression options. Just because I don't want not having the tool that does the particular thing that would be right for the circumstance. I don't want not having that to be the reason I can't bring the best possible thing to the session. Like I never want someone to ask for something that I can't deliver just because I didn't bring one thing. I always have at least one fretless, even if I can't imagine why there would be fretless on this record. I just bring, like, sometimes, and it depends on the relationship with the producer. If you're working with a producer you work with all the time, they always want you to have the same 3 instruments. I just bring those. If I'm working with someone I've never worked with, I bring the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's. I love the passion. I mean, I love the passion that you have. I mean,
Thanks,
one of the questions that,
back at you, by the way.
I know that feeling of when you've achieved what that person is desiring.
Yeah.
And it's an energy that happens in the studio that just kind of like, it's like a ball that it's like one of those, it's not a firecracker, but it's like this big poof, and it's like, you feel it. And it's almost like it's a high for sure.
Yep.
The coolest part about it is it's not like live, which is a different high.
Oh yeah.
That just goes into the ether and we never see it again. This is recorded and you can always go back to that place and you can remember that moment. Is that it? Is that for you? Is that what it is?
That's a huge part of it. And I feel like it's also, it's definitely a very particular kind of satisfaction. Just there's a sort of a team building aspect to it. There's just a creative satisfaction of having, especially I really like sessions where you have to dig for something. Like, it's a different kind of thing. Like there are sessions where you just sit down and the chemistry, everyone's on the same page. Everyone had exactly the right amount of coffee. Everyone's a good person. You get along usually personally. That I find that's a big part of it, is that even if you don't know the people, sometimes you walk into a session with people you've never played with and it's all just this immediate feeling of good humor and camaraderie. And, you just go out there and you play the first take of a song. It's like, oh, well, that was that. And then other times...
would you call it do you like the struggle of it or do you like the searching of it?
I like the searching, and I like the fact that I like it when people are specific for a reason, like, or particular for a reason. I don't like it when people are just indecisive, because I feel like, well... then you just go down a rabbit hole of, well, I don't know. Do you know? Oh, you don't know. Well, then what about this random idea that's coming from nowhere in particular? Oh, that didn't do it for you? Okay, well, how about this completely different random idea? Yeah. And I feel like that's just you trying to, you're just guessing at that point. And I don't enjoy the guesswork aspect of it. I like it when someone clearly has a vision in their head, even if they don't know how to get it. There's something in there that is the finished sound, and you're helping them achieve that in a small way. And I find it really satisfying, because then I feel like it's like I've gotten to know myself a little better. I've gotten to know this person a little better, and together we both were okay. I mean, there is a vulnerability to that, honestly. When you're in the studio, you have to be open to sort of going, what about this idea? I really like this idea. Oh, you don't like it? Oh, okay. Well, here's another idea I really like. What do you think? Oh, you don't like that? Okay. And to be that open and not have it
ego
deflate
just
you.
let that go.
Yeah, exactly. You sort of have to be willing to sort of take the rejection as a positive thing as much as possible, if that makes any sense.
It totally does, and I think that's something that's something we all learn. I mean, I if there's the people that want to be session musicians, that's the first thing that they need to do. And you can't wake up one day and say, that's the way I'm going to be, because when somebody rejects what you're bringing to the table, you have to be able to understand that they're not attacking you.
That's right, and they're not saying you're not good.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like we were talking about as you get a little older and you do more and more records and more sessions, and you have a longer resume. As much as anything else, it sort of proves that, okay, well, clearly it's not that I don't know how to do this, which is, I mean, that's the place I would go to every day when I was in my 20s. It's like, I just don't know how to do this. I'm terrible. And then you gradually learn, no, it's a process, and you have to be okay with that. And you have to be humble enough to know that you're going to be wrong more than you're right. And then just keep doing it anyway and still be positive. That's the trick. As I look at it like, oh, you don't like the 10 ideas I did? Okay, cool. Then this is an opportunity for me to try something I'm not as comfortable with, or get further outside my comfort zone and try something and see if that, and when that works, that's really cool. I really love that. When someone's like, you just try something that you think is crazy and you get the response, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I want. It's like, oh, okay, cool. It's a weird way to, it's a weird job. I don't need to tell you that.
It's a very strange job.
Yeah. But
it's such a learned, it's a habit,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
One of the things that is, because you're a Canadian, you grew up in Canada, as did I.
Yep.
Oh, Canada.
Yep.
Just a couple coffee crisps sitting here. There's some Shreddies in the corner.
I know.
Some ketchup chips in the thing.
I'm drinking my coffee out of a Tim Hortons mug.
Exactly. We're well represented. The thing that I struggled with the most, which is probably, I'm curious if you went through this as well. You might have hinted at it a little bit, but I think it's different than what other people would struggle with. But growing up in Canada, like having an ego, you typically want to suppress that because you don't want to like rise above. It's a socialist society.
That's right.
I've been talking a lot about that, different countries and that kind of idea. Like it kind of stops you from doing that. To me, I grew up always with, ego is bad. Don't have an ego. Don't have an ego. Mm-hmm. And then you come to this place where I had a really good friend a couple of years ago. We were sitting there, and I was like, man, like I don't have that. Like I can't like have that ego. And he goes, you have an ego? Absolutely. You stand up in front of thousands of people and you play a saxophone solo. Yep. You have to have an ego. And I was like, oh wow, you can look at it as a positive. Yeah. And I think that flipped for me. I mean, you do it naturally. You're very, you get quiet and you. You rise up when somebody lets you. Like you wait for the permission. And I love how you said, it's better to ask for forgiveness. Yeah. But I think in the studio, for me, it was happening, but to actually know that you can go there where you have to have an ego, but it has to show itself in certain facets. You know, it can't be in your ideas. It can't be in what you're trying to project onto a track or project onto something. But when they say, okay, Mark, go, then all of a sudden it's like you got to flip that switch. Yeah. That I think that's tough to do. It's tough to learn that. Yeah. I mean, Lynn Seaton, you remember, for the bass teacher at North Texas State. I mean, he was huge for me in a number of ways. But one of the things he said to me, because I definitely came into there, I think what you're saying is that you need to have a healthy ego. Exactly. Yeah. And there's a healthy range. Access it, not let it turn like control you. Well, it's like I feel it's like body weight. There's a range that's healthy, and it's different for everybody. Absolutely. Yeah. If your ego is too weak, then you, like you said, you cannot get up in front of thousands of people and go, check this out. Yeah. You're gonna love this. On the other hand, what I suffered from in my 20s was the opposite, where my insecurities sort of forced my ego to overcompensate, and I crossed the line. The reason I brought up Lynn is he had a great saying that kind of put this in perspective. He said, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And to me, what that means is that when your ego is forced to overcompensate for your id or your insecurities being very strong, which mine certainly were in my 20s especially, then it pushes you past the point of confidence that is in service of the music, and it pushes you into confidence that is completely unwarranted
by your abilities. And we all know those people, and I was one of them for quite a while.
And there are people that exist in that are hyper successful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but they're not happy.
They're not happy.
No, because it's not, because you have this hyperinflated ego that's existing because of your hyperinflated insecurities. And I feel like you need to get both of those under control. You need to have some insecurities because you need something that pushes you to keep getting better. But you also need an ego that's healthy enough to go, you know, I can do this, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means that didn't work. And I know from experience that if I just go back and I retool the approach, or I try something different, or I try, you know, I know I'll find it. I might not find it as quickly as maybe some of the people at this session would wish I did, but I will find something that's good, and we'll all be happy. And I know I'll get there. And I think if you can take it from that and just have the confidence to go, at some point, good music is going to happen. However long that takes, I'll try to make it happen as fast as possible.
That's a beautiful statement. At some point, good music is going to happen.
Yeah, I think.
At some point, I'm not going to access the best part ever. It's the music that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's the question of having. I think you have to have a healthy enough ego to be able to sort of pull back and go. It doesn't matter if anyone even is aware that I'm on stage right now. It doesn't, or in the session. Like, if no one says, "Hey, great playing" to me, that probably means I did something really good. Yeah. You know, that because I'm just out of the way and I'm letting the music happen, and I'm bringing these years of experience and all of the practicing and all of the, you know, gear that I've bought, whether I could afford it or not at the time, and I'm bringing every tool and part of myself that I have access to make this music as good as I can. And, you know, if there are other weak links, I can't do anything about that. So I'm not going to get pissed off that I'm associated with people that I don't think are that good. I'm going to do whatever I can to try to make the situation better, whatever that is, even if it's just cracking terrible jokes to relieve tension because something's not working and people are getting frustrated. You know, like,
it's a lot of room reading.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, you know, I've learned a lot as I've done more production. That's where you really learn, oh, I see what the qualities are in a side person that I want, because when you hire people and they have those qualities, you're like, thank you so much for being cool and good. And then you want to be more like that. Yeah. So it's just a constant growth thing, I think. And you just have to, for me, it's always a question of keeping the end result in mind, which is the music has to be as good as it can be, you know? And that doesn't necessarily mean that my bass part has to be anything special. It just means that the group of us, whatever the group is, working together are going to make something that's as good as it can possibly be. And by good, it doesn't mean impressive necessarily. It means effective at creating whatever vibe or emotion or mood is the goal. You know, like if you're doing I do sessions in a lot of different genres, as we all do. You know, and sometimes you can go from literally, like when I'm going back to Toronto on Wednesday, driving up, Thursday afternoon, I'm playing on a track for Celine Dion. Nice. Thursday evening, I'm playing at the Jazz Bistro with Robbie Botosh and Lionel Lewis. Yeah. Jeez. That's a real gear shift. Yeah, of course. Because playing with Robbie and Lionel is just like, okay, that you got to bring your A game. You got to be really open to what these two monsters are doing and fit yourself in the middle somewhere. You know, because physically on the stage, I will be right in between the two of them. So it's a question of basically sort of, especially in that music, I feel like the upright bass role is to connect the heaviosity that's coming from either end of the stage and ground it a little bit. Whereas during the session during the day is going to be very much about what's the least, getting a really nice tone. What's the simplest, nicest part I can play that's going to complement these amazing vocals that are happening without getting in the way. And but the end result is, okay, for the Celine Dion track, there's a specific end result and feeling that you're trying to create. So that's the target. And then you gear everything towards that. And then with the jazz gig at night, there's a much different, it's live, it's jazz, it's with these ferocious players. So again, there's a very different end result in mind, but now I have to gear what I'm doing toward that. And I feel like that's what makes it possible and not to go nuts. Because then the next day I literally have a heavy metal recording session with a band I don't know. Yeah. Like I'm replacing a part for someone. I won't say any more than that, but that does happen sometimes. I think we all know that.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love when they listen back and go, man, I sounded really
Yeah, that's
great.
not so bad. Well, it's like the classic, there's a story like that about Ringo that Quincy told recently, Quincy Jones.
Was that in the movie? Because I just watched the movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you guys.
I know I'm so behind.
Yeah.
There's a list my arm's length of stuff I haven't checked out yet.
That was in an article I remember now. Yeah, but you tell it again because I don't remember.
Basically, the gist of it was that Ringo played a part and he was really struggling, and they said, "Why don't you guys take a break?" They brought a session player in. He did it in one pass, and it was perfect. Mm-hmm. And then they came back and they did playback, and Ringo said, "Geez, I don't think that sounds so bad. I thought that sounds pretty good to me." It's like, yeah, that's not you, buddy. And I think Ringo Starr is a fantastic drummer, not for nothing. But
that just goes to that's our topic, and what we've been talking about. It's like some people are just not right for certain things.
Yeah, and the thing about music is that it's one of the least objective things in the world. Everything you do in music, somebody is going to think it's the best thing ever, and somebody is going to think it's garbage.
Yes.
And that, again, is where the healthy ego has to come into place, because you have to be able to go, okay, I don't think it's garbage, but, I'll listen to your critique, and if there's anything truthful in there, I'll try to, lower my shields enough to just go, should I have done something different? And then if you go, no, this person just doesn't like me, then you sort of go, fair enough, that's how it works. Mm-hmm. And, if somebody thinks it's the greatest thing ever, again, you go, okay, well, I don't think it's the greatest thing ever, but what is it about what I did this time that spoke to this person, and how can I do that more? Yeah. It's such an inner game of tennis thing music is. Like, you just constantly trying to find how to do it better, and without hating yourself, ideally, which is, we've all we've all had that problem too. Yeah. I know that,
You and I share I can hear again the enthusiasm, and I was going back to a day that I had recently where I woke up and I stacked a classical piece from bass clarinet to clarinets to flute to soprano sax, and then I went to a next session where I was like screaming altissimo alto. And then I came home and sat in the studio and worked with a singer-songwriter till 3 a.m. and made that was my day. And I remember going to sleep that night going, that was a fucking great day.
Yeah.
And I think that you and I share that similar kind of,
Absolutely.
we want to be as versatile as we can be, because we want to be thrown into these environments, because that's what excites us.
Yeah.
We like walking into a room and going, okay, this is what I have. I'm here. What do you got?
And how do we make this work together? How do we get together and make something that is cohesive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you, as somebody that is in all these different environments, I mean, obviously you get to a certain level on your instrument and you've done enough checking out of song, like you say, your toolbox of styles. Like you went through all your bass players and you learned the different styles. Yeah. Like the 20 different types of, when somebody says Motown, that could be 20 different things. Yeah. So how do you look at your time now? Obviously you have, that's in there. That's an internalized thing. That's in your hands. That will never leave your hands. Yeah. But how do you continue to try to, as you're going in your career, do you want to just get more versatile, or do you find ways to focus on certain things specifically?
No, I don't think that's my path. I mean, I think if there was one thing that I was going to focus on, it would have shown itself to me by now.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that I still enjoy having this really weird schizophrenic career where every day brings a new thing, and I sometimes don't even know what it is.
I can tell that's where you exist, and you love that.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, a big part of my life right now, especially bouncing around between Toronto and Nashville. I'm trying to be in Nashville as much as I can because I love it, but a lot of my career still is in Toronto. So there's that. A lot of it is just.
Well, who are you playing with? It's not just like Sarah Harmer, Rachel Platten, Celine Dion, Nelly Furtado. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough career up there, dude.
Well, it's really rough. Yeah, I know. And please don't. If this sounds at all like complaining, just.
I'm not. No, it didn't sound that way. I'm just trying to brag on you a little bit because I haven't had a chance to do that really yet.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks. And
I wanted to dive into details because people can look you up, but I wanted to.
Yeah. And I just love the challenge of getting to do all that stuff. And I mean, honestly, the Nashville thing has been a bit of an ego. Speaking of ego, like I've had some days when I've been down here for a month, and I've been fortunate enough to get some really great sessions while I'm down here. But the bouncing back and forth thing makes it hard to establish a lot. And Nashville, there's so many amazing. Oh my God, there's so many great musicians.
Like 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5. You're missing some zeros there, buddy. So, naturally, it just takes a while for people to find out that you're there and find out what you can do. So there's that thing of I've been trying to have work that I can do while I'm down here, like more production or composition work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so that I don't, what's the word? I don't want to say unspool, but forget that I actually do have a career. Like, because when you come down here, it's very easy to feel like nothing. And especially, at the stage of life that I'm at, that's not a great feeling to just feel like, wow, I've been working my ass off for 30 years and nobody cares. But it just takes time.
I know, dude. We had that conversation over at Berry Hill.
And that was a year ago.
It was a year ago. And it's tough it's tough to start again.
Absolutely.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But you're not, that's the beautiful thing about the music industry now is you're not really starting again because like you said, the world is so small. I mean, there are certain people in this world that are in positions of power that are trying to make borders difficult to cross.
Yes, there are.
We won't go down that path.
No.
But the internet obviously has helped make it so, and it's easy to fly. It's easy to drive.
Yep.
And one of the beautiful things about social media for what we do, I think, I have some singer-songwriters sitting in that chair, and we talked about that being a beautiful thing to propel their brand and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think I've ever had a conversation out loud. It's mostly been in my brain with another session player. It's like you can be traveling, but you can be on people's minds. It's like because they want somebody that's doing stuff that's cool. It's like you can post that you just did a Celine Dion session, and somebody in Nashville will go, "Oh, that's really cool." Like, hey, when are you back? Because they want Mark Rogers.
But I mean, the flip side is that because I'm doing this stuff in Toronto, a lot of times it'll be like, "Oh, I should use this guy," and then it'll get like, "Hey, what are you doing Wednesday?" And it's like, "I'm in Toronto."
Or or you've gone back to Nashville.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, like you have to physically be there, and I mean Toronto. I'm very very fortunate that when I'm there, when I'm there for a couple of weeks, that those 2 weeks will fill up really fast, and I'll be really really busy with great stuff that I want to be doing, which is, I mean, awesome. I'm not bragging. I'm really lucky.
Would you say that's because they want you?
Well, I think at this point,
that.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, again, because of the internet now, there's the whole remote tracking thing where there are producers that they've become accustomed to what I do and they like it. So if they have a project for me, I don't necessarily have to be in Toronto to do it. Mm-hmm. But what I don't have that going on in Nashville just because I'm not physically here as much as I would like to be. Yeah. But that's changing. I mean, that is like, I've been here for the entire month of October, and it is starting to change, and that helps. But the reason I went down this path was we were talking about the ego thing, and it is always easy, no matter how much you've done. Like I said, I've been pretty busy for 30 years. I've been very lucky, and it's still easy for me to think, oh, I have nothing. I have no career. I can't do anything. I have no accomplishments that matter. You can always go there if you want to, to feel like nothing I do is good enough. Nothing I do is any. Because you're always having to sort of adapt. And I'm still constantly trying to check out I was on the drive over, I was checking out the new Jessie Reyez EP. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly trying to hear new music and new things and what are, quote, the kids listening to. And
you're such a humble soul. I mean, I remember in college the way that you were, and hearing you talk about it now, I see it. I can see it. I can just the energy. I mean, I was a shit show back then, but
yeah, me too.
But I can see it. I mean, we were all kind of feeling our way around, trying to figure it out, and I could see that in you. And it's interesting how you take compliments, and I can see a smile, and I can see the head kind of go down, and you ingest it, and it's cool. I mean, you deserve to take those compliments, but you're living in it now. I can see you living in it and going, I deserve to be there, and it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I want you to feel that way because you do. I mean, you're one of the best bass players on this planet, and you should. Should be there, But it's. I would say though, you still have this thing where I see it where you've always had it, where you would be the first person to kind of step back and just like let people do their thing.
Yeah.
You've always been that. It's kind of like it's not a caregiving situation, but it kind of
is.
Is it? I mean, maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
That's what we want bass players to be in this
that's
world,
the thing.
and that's why you fit that instrument so well.
I've always wondered, and it's hard to know, but I've always wondered, was I attracted to bass because that's the role it plays, or is the fact that I became a bass player has that sort of brought that side out in my personality more? And it's probably a little of both, I think. Like, I do enjoy when, the role of the instrument is, okay. And I remember one of my earliest influences on that was, believe it or not, Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter being interviewed for Canada AM, which is a show that no longer exists. Wow. And they were doing that duo tour the first time I believe it was the late 90s.
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
And and the interviewer had obviously done their homework, which I thought was fantastic. And they said, so, you guys were both part of the classic Miles Davis quintet from the 60s, the Plug Nickel Sessions band, that one with Ron Carter and Tony Williams. And they said, when you were playing that music, I mean, did you always know where you were? And they both kind of chuckled. And Wayne and Herbie kind of looked at each other, and Herbie says, no, but Ron did.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was, and then that, after that, because I was a huge fan of those records at that time. And I remember I went back and I listened to them again with that phrase in my head, and it was just so immediately like, oh, that's how they're doing it. Basically, they're all just going
re-listening
completely
to them in my brain too.
Yeah, they just went. They were going completely bonkers, and Ron Carter was just sitting there holding it down. And then another band I was really into when we were both at North Texas was, of course, the Brad Meldau Trio, because that was
they were huge then. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the same thing. Larry Grenadier is just laying it down so clearly, while the rest of them just go off and do their thing. And I feel like that is definitely in almost every genre, that is the role of bass. And then another quote that I remember reading or hearing one time that was huge was from Marcus Miller, who was one of my early idols and still to this day. I mean, he's just such a phenomenal all-around musician. He was asked by someone, do you think it's more important to learn how to groove or play solos? And he had such a thoughtful answer. He said, I think you should learn whatever excites you about music. Like whatever it is that you think is makes you want to play more, you should check that out. Ultimately, you should be able to do both really well. There's not a priority. It's like you should be able to lay down the simplest groove over and over and over, and then when it's your time, you should be able to blow everyone else off the stage with your solo. And again, that was very like, oh.
That's how I would describe Mark Rogers for sure.
Oh man, well that's high praise. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the goal. When it's appropriate for me to be invisible, that's what I want. When it's time, when the music, and again, it's always situational.
Of course.
When the music benefits from me either doing something more upfront or soloing or doing whatever, then I want that to be. If I'm given a bass solo, I don't want it to be like, oh well, I guess we better do 8 bars just because he's here and he's tirelessly played Roots all night. I want it to be like, no, now this is
time for the customers to order with the waiter.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't want it to be like, and here's the bass solo. So, this is your chance to, get that last round of drinks or whatever. I want it to be like, okay, now this is something that's worth watching. And this is something that is just as good musically as whatever else we've been doing that night. And whatever I have to do to make that happen, I'll try to do,
And it's servicing it in a different way. Like when you play with Robi and Lionel, it's like you're gonna have your times to do that, and that music allows you to be a version of yourself.
Yeah, and I can. It's a little more free. Whereas if I'm given a bass solo in more of a pop context, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to find a cool way to play a song that everyone knows in the audience. Like I'll try to find a way. I've got a bunch of songs that I've worked up sort of semi-solo bass versions of where it can just break down to me and the drummer, and I can do my thing for a little while, and then I can lead up to a song that they're going to go, hey, isn't that like Crazy by Gnarls Barkley? What? Oh, okay, cool. Just because in that context,
what you're servicing customers.
That's what's exciting to me.
And you find that exciting.
Exactly.
Cool.
Because I feel like playing my bebop licks or my whatever stuff I might have in the toolbox, it can stay in the toolbox. That's not the time for it, because that's not what that audience, it's not right with the energy that's been created through the night by this pop gig. It's sort of, I don't know what the word would be. I guess familiarity. Mm-hmm. Like it's new, yet it's familiar. I feel like that's more appropriate for that. Whereas at a jazz gig, if it's an actual jazz gig, I think people are expecting to hear, okay, I don't want to know. I don't know what's going to happen. Something's going to happen, and hopefully it's going to have good energy and it'll be cool. And then, okay, well, that's the time to dig into some of the different things that are not necessarily as familiar.
You find both of those equally.
Yeah.
Is it a response that you're feeling? Is that what you?
That's a big part of it. Yeah, just to feel the energy from the audience that they enjoyed that.
And I mean, they're paying to be there.
Absolutely.
Can't forget about that.
Absolutely. And I can, like I said, I have a home studio. So if there's something that I don't think anyone else would like that I want to do, I can do that at home.
Have the outlet, yeah.
I can do it at home, yeah. Post it on the internet.
Isn't it funny how we get older and we just... We I remember, you're speaking of college.
I don't know if getting older is funny.
I think that, let's say getting older in our minds, not our bodies.
Oh, if only that's how it works.
But getting older and how all the things we used to hold dear, we don't care what people think, and it's like you do.
Yeah, you do.
Just say it out loud.
Yeah, yeah. If you really don't care what anybody thinks at all, that's actually a problem. That's a huge. That's a
psychopath.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, I was trying not to go there.
You could say it out loud.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, that's a serious problem. Otherwise, you care a bit about what people think, and more to the point, I feel like. You just get a perspective as to what's important in life,
and whose opinions matter.
Yeah,
I think that's we should qualify that by saying that there are certain people that you shouldn't care what they think.
Yeah,
there's the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Mark Manson.
Oh, I love that book. I love that book.
And he talks about that. And he basically says, if you don't care about anybody, you are a psychopath.
Yeah.
But the part of it's he talks about in the book his mom got screwed over by a lawyer. He goes, I chose to care about that.
Yeah.
Because it pissed me off because it's my mom.
Yeah.
And I want to go after the lawyer. But you choose what to care about. And it's
right.
the same thing. You can choose what people's opinions matter to you.
Yeah.
But I think but the difference is if you're paying, there's the live and the session thing that you exist in. And you've explained both of those things very, very beautifully, but so differently.
Cool.
Like the session thing is you're still being paid to be there and to service the song.
Yes.
But there is a person's vision there.
Yeah.
And then in live, it's like you can't step out of what the box that you're being paid to be inside of.
No.
Unless it's your thing.
That's right.
And people are paid to watch you step out of your box.
That's right.
And even then, how many artists have to stay in their box to get people there? It's like they're creating their own box.
Yeah.
But it's still a box.
Well, one of my favorite bands of all time, obviously, is Radiohead. I think I'm not alone. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting thing because you look what happened. They had a song early in their career called Creep, obviously, which was their massive big hit. And so they were being booked to play in, Spring Break 99, Much Music, whatever. And they're playing, these pasty English dudes are like, why, what are we doing here? That's what, this is weird. Yeah. And then they went through years where they would refuse to play that song because it's like, no, we're doing so much more interesting and better stuff now. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know what the actual thought process was, but I know
that was a constant battle.
Yeah, they would that was the song that people were coming to hear, and they were like, "No, we do this now. We're not." And then later, more recently, they played in all their shows again. I saw them play it in Toronto at the amphitheater, and it was amazing. And you can see that they've come on this journey where now they're realizing, these people have stuck with us for a long time. They've basically given us carte blanche to do all this crazy thing and still get to make a great living.
They're still buying it, yeah. Dude.
So they love that song. Let's not be assholes. Let's play it for them.
Yeah,
I think, or something like that is going on where they've decided. I mean, it obviously isn't like they needed to play it because they needed the money or they needed. They're still not really responsible to anybody creatively, but for whatever reason, they've decided that no, we do. Our fans want this, and we want them to be happy. I'm assuming is the thought process.
If there ever was a band that could say no, we're not playing that would be the band. It's fascinating that you bring that up. That's what they're doing now.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
And it was cool to see. And then they also did like Airbag and all the other ones that are just wow. But it's just neat that they it seems like what's happened is they went from this song gave us everything. But now we resent being beholden to that song, so we're actively going to not play it no matter how much people want us to, and we're just going to forge ahead and do other stuff that we really believe in. To, wow, if it hadn't been for that one song at the beginning, we wouldn't have all this other great opportunities and this great life that we have. So now it's our responsibility to give it back. I'm assuming that's something like, I mean, I don't know what goes on.
Well, I remember I used to get so frustrated listening to them talk when they were one of the first ones that did the, here's our album, pay what you want for it to download for free.
Yeah.
And I remember them talking about that and coming out and saying, hey, we're so strong, we're screw the record labels and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, the record labels gave you the fans. Like, we got screwed on all that. And I'm like, okay, you got screwed, but now you're about to make $1 gazillion on this record because of High and Dry, because of Creep, because of Pablo Hunt, because of these songs, it's like you're basically saying F you to these people that helped you. It didn't make sense to me at the time.
Yeah.
I'm glad they've come around full circle.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think that's part of what can help, because no matter who you are and what kind of career you have, I think maybe with the exception of 3 or 4 people on the planet, there's always someone you can look at and go, oh, you see, they're doing it right. That's what I should have done. Or
if McCartney can play "Hey Jude" on every show, then every other human being in this damn world that has had a hit can play the hit.
I think he's one of the 3 or 4 people. But
exactly.
I think it's just helpful when you're trying to find that balance between, the ego and the id and just trying to stay on a path where you're getting better without, losing sight of what it is, the thing that got you to where you are. I think it's helpful to see that even people like Radiohead, who it's very easy to put up on a pedestal, have their own journey about their relationship with their own work. Like they go from, oh, this is great to, oh, this is crap and we're never doing it again, to, oh, that was actually pretty great again after 20 years or whatever. And it's just helpful to sort of go, yeah, oh, I know the problems that I have as a musician and the issues that I have to deal with. Most of us have those issues, and we just, it manifests in different ways, but we're all dealing with the same basic thing of how do we get better? What does better even mean when you're talking about something where there's no objective, and what it means is, well, it's ultimately what makes me happy and what seems to make other people happy. And again, that's why, talking about things like the reaction you get from the audience when you sort of, my own thing of tailoring what I do to try to suit the circumstance is because I feel like that gives me the feedback to know whether I'm actually still getting better or not, or whether I've, deviated into a cul-de-sac of my ego or whatever. Like, I really feel like you need that kind of external feedback to sort of as a guidepost. But at the same time, your own judgment still has to be first and foremost. So there's that thing we were talking about, where how do you weigh different people's opinions? It's like, well, I think you have to have a goal in mind, but you have to be okay with not getting there. When you do get there, you have to think, oh, that's great, but I still might not get there next time. When you don't make it, it's like, okay, well, that's too bad, but I still might get there next time.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what keeps you motivated to continue developing and trying to push hard. Because, you do get to a point, and I know you know this, where you could just coast now and have a career.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do any of the hard work anymore if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And it gets easier to do that as you get older, because it's sort of like, oh, well, I have a resume now. I have my connections. I could just sort of do what I do and never learn how to do anything else in my life and never get better at anything. And I would still make a living probably.
Yeah.
But I feel like you also lose something inside that it's important, that you want to try to keep going as long as possible. So,
well, it kind of ties into the Radiohead thing, and it ties into what you're talking about. And I want to ask you this question because it's to be completely transparent, it's something that I'm looking inward on myself of.
Sure.
What kind of process do I want to wake up and have what are the processes in my life that I enjoy the most, that I can do that every day and all day? Because that is happiness to me. Yeah. The end result is beautiful, but the process of that
absolutely is
the most important part. And I'm still searching for that, because we still have to do things that we don't love the process of.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still going to have to freaking go to the DMV and get your license renewed and all this shit in life. I mean, there's all that stuff.
And there's stuff that we don't like to do.
Exactly. Sorry. You want to do it for me? I'll just give you my picture.
Man, I can't wait. Can I please?
But yeah, I mean, there's still things, you can't have this beautiful life of just, there's going to be shit, and you're going to have to do things that you don't love. But I think as you get older, you try to do less and less of those things. But What to you is the process that are you doing the process? Like what's the perfect thing for you? Like you just explained a beautiful thing like the Celine Dion and going and playing with those guys.
Yeah,
that's a good day.
Yeah. But and a big part of that too is sort of there's constant sort of prep work that I'm doing because like okay, I'll just give you a rough overview of my schedule for the next couple of weeks. Like I drive up to Toronto on Wednesday. Thursday I have the Celine session and then the gig with Robi and Lionel. And then I have a session with the metal band the next day. Then I'm into rehearsals with an artist named Kike Escamilla. He's doing a big Day of the Dead show at Kerner Hall, sort of.
That sounds awesome.
It is. It's really cool, but it's a lot of sort of rootsy, folky, world crossover, sort of folk pop. And I'm rehearsing with Barbra Lica Band, which is more of a jazz thing that I produced her newest record. I've done a couple other records for her. She's doing the CD release that week. So I have the Kerner Hall show. There's the CD release 2 days later. I'm doing a corporate jazz show, which is just it's nothing. It's just show up and play standards. That's awesome. I've got a session with an organist named Joel Vizentine, who's doing like an organ trio record that he wants upright on one track. Doing a gig with a guy named Jesse Ryan. I hope it happens. He's a young sax player from Toronto who's just incredible.
Awesome.
Blends sort of straight ahead jazz with gospel and sort of folkloric African influences, and it's some of my favorite new music. I think he's tremendously talented. And what else am I doing? There's a Philosopher Kings show. It's a band I play with called the Philosopher Kings. Playing a show in Guelph. So there's a lot of different, and that takes me to like November 8th. So it's like there's a lot of prep that you have to do as well.
Yeah, people don't realize that.
So yeah, I think the thing for me is just getting to wake up every day and go, okay. So scheduling for me is very important because it's easy to sort of have a couple days. Oh, I'm just gonna do some practicing or writing or whatever, and then you get I have these 3 gigs where I have 3 completely different books that I'm supposed to know. So I try to. I'm always looking ahead.
Do you love that process?
I love it. Yeah,
okay.
I love sort of having. Okay, today I'm working on this from this time to this time, and then I'm going to switch gears and work on this from this time to this time. Then I'm right now I'm doing a couple of writing and production projects for music library companies, production music. So I'll spend a little bit of time, doing some research or work on a beat for that. Like.
So time management is something that kind of gets you.
Yeah, time management, but also just the opportunity to. How do you say this? Just to fill my days with music. Like I basically I'm always working on stuff. Mm-hmm. And then occasionally my wife's a very, very busy writer producer as well. I mean, we don't even have time. You guys
are like the hardest working humans on this planet.
Well, and what we've learned is one thing we have to do is schedule time to just be a married couple and be together and go do things that human beings do. Like, and things like, shopping. The things they're just the life things that you have to do. You got to work that in there sometime too. And
I'm excited for you guys being down here too, where you get to discover Nashville. I remember when I first moved, how much fun that was.
It's really fun. It's such a great scene. Everybody's so cool and so friendly and supportive, and there's so many people that are good. Yeah. Like there's just so many great people that are great at what they do, and
great people too.
They're
I mean, you said that, but good people. I don't think you can be successful in this town by being an asshole.
No, I don't think you can do that anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah, absolutely anywhere.
No, nobody's that good anymore. No. There may have been a time, but that time has passed, which I'm totally fine with.
When you find somebody that's a good human that also has the ability to, and I think being a good human has a lot to do with when we're talking about the ego and having that in check as well.
Yeah.
And realizing, I don't know, I feel like Nashville, out of all the places that I live, has that the most.
Yeah.
Probably because it comes from such a song. This town is based around songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lyrics and words.
Oh yeah, I know. The level of the writing that happens in this town just boggles my mind. That's an arena where I just, I do a little bit of writing, but not like they do here. I just would never put myself in that situation here.
And I remember when I first came and did the rounds, and I just hung out and was listening and stuff like that. I mean, there are songs that I still remember. I can still see them singing these songs that have never done anything.
Yeah.
And I remember these things, and I'm just like, wow, why is that? How is that not like in everybody's CD player.
Yeah. How is that not a huge song? I know.
I never understood it. And then I started to understand the business more and I realized why. But it's...
Yeah. There's no venue for that kind of song.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
to have mass appeal.
And the beautiful thing now is that there is. It's called, the internet's there. So you can make this and you can put it out and somebody in Germany can hear the song that I went to hear at the Bluebird.
That's right. That's right.
It's a beautiful thing. It's such an infancy as far as that's concerned. But yeah, it's a tough business, man.
I know.
And to hear what you've done and the success that you've had. I mean, it's obviously earned.
Well, back at you again.
Well, it's not. I think you can never take it for granted.
Oh God, if you no.
And you always have to be grateful.
Yeah, and you always. I was having this discussion with a bunch of younger musicians a couple of weeks ago, and. They all really were. They made a point sort of collectively that I thought was fantastic. It's that the days of no longer having to prove yourself, that's not a thing anymore. There was a time when you could sort of get to a certain level of success, and then it's like, okay, you're good. And I mean, to a certain extent, you can still continue to make a living, but I in terms of staying.
What is the word? Relevant?
Vital? Yeah.
Vital, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Relevant is another word for sure. Yeah, like you don't ever want to just be like, oh yeah, you just do a one thing and you sort of just do that. Like I think if you want to constantly stay current and relevant and vital and all of those things, you just have to keep putting the work in. You have to keep proving yourself over and over and over again. And
it is very much society has become a what have you done for me lately?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
The credits don't really carry them. I would say that, I mean, you probably have hung out with younger musicians more than I have. I don't do any teaching anymore, so I don't really get that part of it. But I wonder, I mean, you can answer this, but I wonder like nobody's going. I mean, I think it has to do a lot with the fact that there's no liner notes anymore. None of that stuff exists.
Yep.
So you have to actually actively seek. And if you go to your All Music Guide and my All Music Guide, it's missing a bunch of stuff.
Oh my God! And I also have there's also another Marc Rogers who's an oboist in Ottawa,
really?
And I have a bunch of his credits, and he has a couple of mine. So
there's a Tyler Summers drummer too.
There you go.
Things. I'm with you on that.
Yep.
It's like there's no central place to go where they can go.
No.
Oh, you've done that. That's pretty cool.
No.
They have to, and if they ask you a lot of the time, everybody's in their musical bubble.
Yeah,
they exist in this thing where it's like they go on their Spotify playlist and they play their thing.
Yep,
and I think that's beautiful because it means that it's so funny. I had my Spotify. I don't know if it was hacked or something, but I would be listening to a track of mine and in the car or something, and all of a sudden the track would switch and it would be like a rap thing.
Oh, so someone else was like
listening to it was super creepy.
Yeah.
So I went online, everything changed my password, it stopped happening. But it happened 4 or 5 times. But you know what I did, man? I let it play for like the 30 minutes I was in the car.
Whoa.
Because I was like, all right.
DJ for me, random stranger.
Show me what's up. And it was changing while I was driving in the car. And it was super creepy. But it was also fascinating because I was listening to stuff that I would never, ever in a million years have listened to.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, some of it I'd put on, I was like, all right, I dig. Like it was a couple rappers from Atlanta that I had never heard of. And I put it on my playlist. I'm like, all right, I dig. I'm going to check this out.
Yeah.
But it would never be on my radar. But you think about that person, that's their bubble.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know, like they'll probably know who Celine Dion is. But there are certain people that you play with it. It's like,
at the very least from Deadpool 2.
Exactly. Yes. What a great movie. Jeez.
I know.
That's one of the few movies I've rewatched as soon as it was over because I missed so much.
Yeah.
But Serena Ryder, for example.
Yeah.
Like one of the best singers on this planet.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but how many bubbles does she exist in?
Yep.
You know, and the fact you've done a record with this person and you've been a major part of her world.
Yeah.
You know? And to kids, it's like, cool. It's great.
Yeah.
How do you sound, man? Show me what you're playing on my track. And you walk in, and how many times have you walked into a studio with a young producer and they're looking at you and they're like, huh. You know, like you don't fit the part because you're not dressed like everybody else in that room.
No.
And there's smoke in the air and like, you're just like, you're walking into this place and he's like, all right, this is what I want you to do. And he does not give a shit about your past.
No.
He wants you.
Yeah.
And that's when the ego pops up and you're like, all right, I got this.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
And a lot of times it's like I've had that experience a lot. And first of all, a lot of times the experience is you walk in and you realize, wow, this person's never worked with a live bass
That
player
is so
before.
common, yes.
That's not. They don't. They know that this instrument exists, but this is their first time actually recording one.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've literally had to say, okay, I've got my rack. Let's get this set up, and I'll dial in a tone. I'll show you how to turn the input down. Blah blah blah.
My goodness.
And that's totally cool. I look at that as an opportunity to sort of say, because I think a lot of times they're just doing it like, oh well, this guy's a little older, and he'll bring some of that old classic music juju to my track somehow, and then they'll immediately reference 3 bands or acts that I've never heard of in my life. Yeah. And I feel like, again, it's the kind of thing where once upon a time I might have tried to bluff and be like, oh yeah, I know what you mean, and then just try to figure it out on the fly. Now I feel like I'm confident enough to go, yeah, I don't know that, play it for me.
Yeah.
Or I'll pull it up on my Spotify and I'll check it out and go, oh, I see what you mean. It's this kind of thing, and then I'll do it.
That's a good point. And then you listen to it and you go to your toolbox and go, okay, well, this is what they're chasing.
They're influenced by this, which is influenced by this, which is influenced by this. And I know all the steps leading up to it. I just haven't checked out the newest one.
Yeah.
And first thing I'll do is, like you said, I have a constant, to be checked out playlist, and I'll add it to that. So whenever I have these long drives back and forth from Toronto to Nashville, part of what I'm doing is just listening to a lot of music that I haven't had a chance to check out, and newer stuff especially. And I find that another thing about getting older, which, by the way, we got to make sure we tell the story about the first time we met, because that was literally the first time I ever felt old. But we'll get to that.
That was, dude. Yeah. It was
a long time ago.
A long time ago.
I realized that.
So hopefully you feel younger now.
In a weird way, I kind of do. But
you look happier and healthier.
Oh yeah,
younger.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the end result. I think everything in your life should constantly be getting better, or you need to reevaluate what you're doing.
Completely agree.
But
definitely have to grow.
And what better means, of course, changes. You got to roll with those punches too. Like, better might mean getting to bed early so you can get up and go to the gym.
Absolutely.
Which.
Which you did today.
I did today. Yeah. My legs are definitely very aware that we did that today.
I did not do that today, but I will be running later today.
Well, that was my first time back in about 2 weeks, so I'm really feeling it.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
thanks.
good. You get back in it a couple times, and then you're good, right?
Yeah, just in time to drive back up to Toronto.
Yeah, and sit in the car. I have tomorrow. I have. Do you know Kyle Whalum?
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's coming over to do this, and he's an ultra marathoner.
Oh wow.
100-miler.
Whoa.
So there's always somebody out there that's doing more than you.
Oh my God. I know. I think that in my case, there's quite a few people that are doing more.
Well, and like you said, it's whatever your body wants and whatever your body takes.
Yeah, and I definitely the exercise thing is huge as you age too. But, okay, now I've derailed myself. What were we talking about?
Shoot.
We could always rewind it, I guess, but that seems like cheating.
That is cheating.
We were going to talk about, we could just go to the origin story.
Let's go to the origin story.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear it from your perspective.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So at the time, this would have been early to mid-90s in Vancouver.
This was I can tell you exactly. It was 1995.
There you go. There you go.
I was 15 years old.
Yeah, and I was not. I had been out of college for a few years, and I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. And
which is that insecurity manifest.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was like, hey, as far as Vancouver goes, I'm definitely like, I would do anything to avoid comparison to someone better than me.
Wow.
Like, oh yeah, it was a real problem I had to work through. That was like, I had to be the best guy, or I was nothing. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap, and it's bad. And then,
well, I applaud you for, again, derailing. I applaud you for going to North Texas, because you seemed, when you showed up there, that felt, I could feel that. And again, I was 19, so I didn't know what the hell I was feeling. But I'm looking back on it now, and I could feel you feeling that, seeing that. And then you were there for 2 years?
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
And then I could see that shifting. Like, I could see you going from, because everybody was like, holy crap, who is this guy? I remember Wigton went like that. He just was like, everything that you did, like, the guys were there watching, because you had it in your hands, and you were a chop guy.
Yeah.
But then the upright came in, and I think that probably did the humbling.
Oh yeah, well that was the story behind North Texas. Okay, we got to finish.
No. Let's do this North Texas. We'll go back to the other.
Okay, well, basically the idea behind North Texas was Vancouver was starting to feel a little small in terms of the scene. The scene was getting smaller, and I felt like I was ready for more. So the plan was, I'm going to move to New York. And at the time, in my 20s, I was a very I was playing a lot of electric bass, and I had an upright bass that I would play sometimes.
Okay. So you were dabbling in it a little bit.
Oh yeah, I was playing it, but I wasn't good. I mean, I would literally get people calling me going, "Hey, Mark, I need an upright bass player for this Sunday. Do you know anyone?"
Okay.
And I'd be like, well, I have one. And then I would go do it, and they would be like, yeah. And then they would never call me again for upright. And it was like, oh, okay. And Brad Turner gave me some great advice, a mutual friend of ours from Vancouver, multi-instrumentalist, incredibly talented.
Who I caught up with when I was home on the phone, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, which we can talk about later.
Absolutely. Yeah. He basically said, yeah, if you move to New York, you'll get a lot of work on electric, and you'll never play upright again. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, no one's going to call you for upright. You don't sound good enough, and there's the best guys in the world are there. And
I was going to say, and that's the way New York works. That's why I left, because you have to focus on one specific thing.
Yeah.
To be great at it, because there's 50 other guys that are going to take your gig. So
exactly.
You can't dabble in all these different things.
And I sort of was like, well, then maybe I should just go get good at upright. So I, applied to a bunch of different schools, and North Texas gave me the best deal. Cool. Frankly.
Yeah.
And what I did when I went there, I literally, you probably remember this, I put the electric bass in the case and only practiced upright for the whole time I was there. And
But you played a lot of electric gigs.
That's the thing. Yeah. I'd take the electric out when it was like, I have a gig for you on electric, or, a session or whatever. So I would play electric, but I'd never practiced it. I was like, I've put in probably more than 10,000 hours at this point on this thing. I'm just every spare second of working on music is the upright. And after the first year, I mean, you probably remember this, I just wanted to quit. I was like, screw this. I'm done with upright bass. I never want to, I can't, because it was like I was forced in my late 20s to confront the fact that I was basically have to start over. Like all the things I thought I knew were actually, not only did I have to get better, I had to stop doing the things I'd been doing and just start from the very beginning. And I was just not sure if I wanted to do that. But fortunately, I had, Lynn was incredibly supportive.
He had just gone on.
That was his first year, too.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, my first year was his first year, which was kind of great. And he was just like, let's just take this one step at a time here. And there were a lot of things I wanted to change about my playing. I was one of those real low action pickup guys. Like really, tone was not happening at all. And he doesn't use a pickup. He just uses microphone. So right away I switched to that.
I feel like I remember you did an upright gig when we played a gig together in White Rock, I think.
Yeah.
And you played upright on that.
Yeah.
And I do remember that. It was a very kind of like tinny kind of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I
just no tone at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Just sounded terrible. And again, it was the insecurity that was keeping me from going, just start, just take some lessons, get better. It was like, no, I have to,
just do,
yeah, I have to just do it. And it definitely was that first year.
You switched the mic thing,
and just raise the action way up.
Yeah. Lynn's action, I mean, his hands were like.
Yeah. And I basically just copied his setup. I was just like, okay, that's more like what I want to sound like than I sound now. So I'm just going to copy that for now and then find my own thing later. And I did. And it was, demoralizing and just heartbreakingly difficult sometimes to just sort of deconstruct everything that I thought I knew and just start over. But it was also sort of the beginnings of realizing that a lot of the work that needed to be done was not on the bass playing, it was on the bass player. Yeah. I just needed to get my head screwed on straight about some things about music. And that's what that school ended up being about for me was learning what music was to me and how I could fit into it instead of looking at it as just an opportunity to feel bad about myself most of the time.
Yeah.
And like not good enough, just to go, no, this is not what that is. So, and as a result, I mean, I feel like I just changed a lot about my life in a great way. It was also lost a whole bunch of weight. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, yeah. I remember, yeah. Were you running a bunch?
I was walking.
Walking.
Yeah. I dabbled with running, but I have constant knee problems. It's a genetic thing that my dad had it, his dad had it. So the running thing is
run.
Yeah, they're not. Running is not an ideal thing for me. Low impact is good for me, but I was just walking a ton, and I really changed my diet. I became aware of my diet for the first time, really. But it was all part and parcel of the same thing. Like, okay, just stop faking it and do it for real. Like, stop putting on a show for the world. Stop faking being good and actually get good.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a heavy time for me, for sure. It was a really important developmental time.
Wow, I'm glad we were diving into that.
Yeah.
Stop faking it and actually get good at it.
Yeah. Like, because I think in my 20s, my big thing was appearing to be good.
Yeah.
And then when I got down there, I realized, no, I actually would like to be good. And that's a lot harder. And that's a lot more inner work than it is just time on the instrument. Because my thing was, I figured, well, there's no problem that more practicing can't solve.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, that's not true. You know, if I'm a broken human being, or if I don't have, not broken, but bent, if I don't have something to say, having all the vocabulary in the world to say nothing is kind of pointless. And yeah, right?
Dude.
I know. And it's one of the, I think that's one of the things I'm most grateful for about having a career in music, is that it gives you the opportunity to learn that stuff about yourself, whereas in a lot of other circumstances that might not come up. That sort of soul searching, who am I? What do I do? What's my place in this world? All that kind of stuff. You really tackle that in a kind of a practical way. Like, you know, like, oh, I don't like this about myself, so I'm just going to change it all. And you can actually do that and get paid.
Yeah, it's true.
You know? It's weird. It's a weird thing, but it's yeah, that time.
Or you can do it and not get paid. I mean, it's one of those things where you're. It's a scary thing to go from this is what you're known for to this is what you want to be.
Yeah.
And try to maintain that along the way.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's. Oh,
that's
terrifying.
a big leap.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have a moment where you kind of hit a spot where you just kind of, was it everybody wants that aha moment. Did you have an aha moment?
I had a bunch of small aha moments that were, and again, being at North Texas, a lot of it was like, you remember when Mike Stern was there for like a week?
Yeah.
And I basically was like, he was a hero of mine. I mean, he still is, but at the time he was like one of my big idols. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to not be me this week. And I'm going to, instead of being insecure about the idea of playing with Mike Stern, I know he's one of those guys that'll play at the drop of a hat. I know he loves to play music and he'll do it anytime, day or night.
That big old smile on his face all the time.
This is what I'm saying. And I said, I'm going to try to just be like that with him. And, you know, I remember I played that recital with the sort of, not recital, but like the guest artist concert, or whatever you want to call it.
Was that at the main hall or was that at the recital hall?
I think it was at the recital hall.
Recital hall, okay.
If I remember correctly. I
don't know if I remember that one specifically.
I remember my mini disc player didn't work, so I tried to record it.
Oh, mini discs, yes.
Yeah, so I was bummed that I didn't get a recording of that. But
well, how did you? So you approached it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I basically was like, I'm just going to hang out with this guy as much as I can, and anytime we have a second, I'm going to say, let's go play some tunes. And I did a couple times during that week. Be between classes, or I'd be, and you know, Mike Stern was just around, and I'd be like, Mike, do you want to go play? He'd be like, yeah, man, let me get my guitar. And he was so enthusiastic. It doesn't matter. And you could just say, do you want to play? And he'd be like, yes.
That's awesome.
Always. He just said yes. Always say yes. And I was like, my approach in that day traditionally would have been, okay, I need to make sure Mike Stern thinks I'm cool.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be aware of what he thought of me, or what, not like it was like trying to appear good instead of trying to be good.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just going to go play with Mike Stern in a room, and I'm not going to listen to the part of myself that's saying you suck or he thinks you suck. I'm just going to play and enjoy it as much as I can. You know, I'd say mixed bag of success during that week. Sometimes I walked out of those sessions going, oh my God, I should just quit. And other times it was like, wow, that was really fun.
Well, it's a process of breaking a habit too. I mean,
yeah, exactly. A really unhealthy habit for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, still battling that. We all are to this day, I think. But everyone has moments where they're like, what am I doing? And fortunately, when you sort of commit to trying to be positive and approach everything from a place of confidence and positivity, it's easier to sort of break that way of thinking and go, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. Remember, we're doing this. So,
well, that's the process of recognizing the ego kind of showing itself, you know. Like I've listened to a lot of podcasts and read a bunch of books about, there are people that have that happen, that, you know, there's this guy that I always talk about, Michael Pollan, that wrote a book about psychoactive drugs, that he started taking it, you know, he's 60-year-old man that wrote for the New York Times, and he was like, I want to try these. And yeah, he had that happen where he did mushrooms, and he remembers separating himself from his ego, and he was staring at his ego. And he said that happened, and he said that's been with him forever, so that when he feels that bubbling up, he can look at it and go,
No.
Yeah, no. He said he basically got 30 years of psychotherapy in that one thing, you know.
Amazing.
And when you do therapy, which, you know, I think everybody should do, that's what you get to. You get to a place where you're like, you can feel it in your body. It's like you can feel it. For me, it manifests in my heart, where I can feel something bubbling up that's going to put me either in a loop or put me in something that I don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
You feel it there, and then you're like, gone. You know?
Yeah. You just you develop an ever. Speaking of, we keep talking about toolkits, but this is a different kind of toolkit where
that's the most important toolkit.
Absolutely.
I mean, suppressing that damn thing.
Oh my God. Yeah. And just being able to see it for what it is, which is lies.
Absolutely.
You know,
it's doing anything to keep you safe.
Yep.
I mean, you have to understand that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, like it can be there. You know, it can be a good thing. It's keeping you alive.
Yeah.
And it's the way, but you have to change. You have to tell it that I'm safe without you.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like this is not the time.
Yeah.
It's like having a dog that barks at everything. You got to train it to be like, no. If someone comes in and I seem scared, then then get them. Otherwise, just chill out.
I love that. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's your emotional guard dog.
Totally is.
And you got to train that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to get to this origin story though, because it's the best. So we were playing at a club called the Purple Onion in Gastown in Vancouver, and I remember the band leader saying, "Oh, there's going to be this young kid coming in. He's 15. He's going to sit in with the band." And my immediate reaction was, "That's bullshit. Why is a 15-year-old sitting in with our band? We're all like the guys."
Just
on
for the people
band.
listening at home, Marc has just crossed his arms
and
he's a child.
How dare? Why do Marc Rogers, have to play with a 15-year-old? Oh, and he's an alto sax player. Great. Yeah. I hope.
Fascinating.
Yeah. This was 24-year-old me, so he was a real idiot. But and that was my reaction. I remember thinking, okay, fine, I guess we'll humor the kid. And you were there with, you didn't have a driver's license yet. You were 15.
No, my dad drove me.
Yeah, and also he had to be there because you weren't old enough to be in the club.
And I had to be escorted to and from the stage.
I remember that too. And I was just the whole time. And then I remember you got up and called some ridiculously fast bop tune. Yeah. And within 30 seconds.
I remember it was in G or B flat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was like, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
I wish I knew, but. Yeah. And I just remember within 5 seconds of starting to play, it was like, oh my God, I'm old. Literally, it was that fast. Just because you started playing and immediately you had it. You were the best player on the stage, and it was immediately obvious.
Wow, dude.
Yeah,
that's.
Like, and I'm not exaggerating. No. Believe me. I mean, it was obvious to everybody that immediately, like, wow, we are getting schooled by a 15-year-old right now. And I just remember thinking this, you speak about this insecurity thing. I mean, it was just like, you see, this is what I've been trying to tell you. Yeah. You suck. Uh-huh. And, but then once I got past that, it was just like, wow, this is really fun because this kid sounds great. You definitely, I remember I went home from that night, and that was one of the first times where I was like reevaluating my life.
No kidding.
Honestly. Yeah. Because it was just like, how am I, it was one of those things where I was just like, wow, I just played with a 15-year-old that crushed me. How did that happen? And why do I feel so weird about that? And it was literally, I think it was one of the first times I ever sort of took time away from just the obsession with getting better, to think like, how did this happen? Like what's going on here? Like, why, what is it about that was better? Like what? It was an amazing thing, honestly. I mean, apart from the just the fun of getting schooled by a 15-year-old.
Oh God, I was scared shitless, dude.
Well, and again, you see that I would never have known that.
I mean, I wasn't. I think that you have, and you've always had this. We always I think that you're born with a certain thing.
Yeah,
you're born with some kind of place that you can manifest some kind of confidence from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you either have that or you don't. My dad has this. My dad talks about this. He says, Tyler, the reason I was never a professional musician was because I don't have the ability to rise to an occasion. If somebody throws me something, I can't process it and come back.
Wow.
And you have that. And there are the people that anybody in any field, like a doctor that's doing a surgery.
Yeah.
It's like they can get to a place where they're in, And that sat with me all my life, and I feel like that's something that you're kind of born with. You either have or you don't.
Yeah. But that's also amazing. I think, just to be aware of it, like that's great advice. Man.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of other reasons why my dad is not a professional musician, and he was one of the best teachers anybody could ever have.
Oh, he
changed hundreds of people's lives.
Yeah, I know.
And that's what he was put on earth to do.
Yeah.
And he. Yeah.
Tyler's dad, by the way, everyone probably knows that he's a phenomenal educator in the Vancouver area. Just amazing. Like a lot of people have passed through that program that have gone on to do a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, chills thinking about it. Yeah, he's and he's not only in music. Like there's people that have become doctors and lawyers and fathers and mothers, and it's like they still come back,
Yeah.
And just because he was in a certain part of town there was a lot of single moms and single dads and not a lot of money. And it's like he became this father figure to a lot of these students.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It was beautiful to watch that and be a part of that. But that's what he was put on earth to do. And I remember him saying that to me. He's like, I see that in you. Like you do that. And I think every musician that has the ability, and it comes back. And then 2 years ago, I had that conversation with my friend, and it's like, well, that's the ego. That's your ego. That's your healthy ego of, I've got this toolbox, and I can stand in front of these people, and I can take that moment over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, my favorite thing is when people like, I probably get this from my mother, when people tell me that you can't do something.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing because it's like, okay.
Oh, really? Right.
So if you combine those two things, then you get to a situation where you're on stage playing something really difficult in front of lots of different people with maybe somebody famous who's looking at you and going, here's your moment, go.
Yeah.
And how many times have we done that? There are people that would cower, and there were people that feel confident and rise. And I think that's in people. It's like I have a friend who's a golfer.
Yeah.
And I call it, it's in golf, it's called the yips.
Yeah.
So you get over a putt and you can't do it, like you can't putt.
Yeah.
And there's also a thing that's interesting that I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot, and he does bow hunting. And he talked about this particular thing where there are people that will get this thing and it just switches in their brain where they'll pull the bow back and they can't let go. Like it's called target loss or something like that. And once you get that, you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something hardwired in us that we either have or we don't, or we can't create it. It can go away.
You can nurture it. Yeah.
And nurturing it is getting your toolbox ready. Because it's
right.
like you can't just be born to go stand up and play a bass solo in front of 1,000 people. It's like that just doesn't happen.
No.
But you nurture that moment. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. Like it's thinking about being nervous. It's like I think when I say the word nervous, I love being nervous. Because it's that fight or flight mentality, and you go.
Yeah, but again, I mean, just to raise the point you were talking about earlier, it's great as long as you have the toolbox to manage the adrenaline.
Absolutely.
Where if the adrenaline takes over, then it can really screw you up. But if you can enjoy that high of the fight or flight without having it take over, that's it.
If it can be fuel. I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think that's
a great point. Yeah.
I think for some people it is. And I mean, I've always, I'm a sports fan all my life, and it's like my favorite players are the ones that in Game 7 get a hat trick,
Yeah.
Terri-Lynn in 1994, on a broken leg. It's like I remember that. It's like those ones that rise to the occasion.
Oh, yeah.
Man. Those chills again.
Yeah.
It's like I would always compare music to sports back then because it's like I love sports, but I was never going to be a professional. But it was one of those things where you just rising to the occasion musically is so fun.
Yeah. And it's very similar. I think because you have to there's a physical component and almost a more important psychological component. Yeah. Just like with being an athlete, where you have to physically be able to pull the thing off.
Yes.
But you also have to have the presence of mind under sometimes, a lot of stress or a lot of pressure to not let that situation, the adrenaline of that situation, take over and derail you from something that you could normally do no problem.
Yeah. Incredible. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is easier said than done,
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, you are definitely born with that, but then I think it also, for some people, I would include myself in this camp, it has to be nurtured. It's like an ember that you have to gradually turn into a roaring fire over, in my case, 30 years. Well, still working on it.
But
obviously.
what you said to me was interesting. Now, I mean, the beautiful thing about our friendship is that I met you when I was 15. Then we were at school together, and then I was in Toronto, and you were playing in my band back then.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Wow.
And that was mid 2000s.
That's right.
And then we drove across. You and your beautiful wife and I, did some shows in Canada.
Yeah.
It was in the late 2000s, and now you're here.
Yeah, I know.
It's so beautiful, man.
I know.
But it's interesting hearing your perspective on how you've grown as a musician and where you started, and specifically talking about North Texas days. Because if I were to look at you, everybody looked at you and said, he's got it figured out. I did, but I could see something. There was something there where it was like, because the humbleness came later.
Yes.
And I think that hearing you in your words, how that came to be, I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that's happened. Because I didn't know what I needed. I thought I just needed to get better at upright bass. I didn't know I needed to get better at being a person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know that the whole point of that trip to going to that school was not to just learn the physical act of playing upright bass better, but it was about learning, like changing my relationship to music, where it was a positive in my life instead of, I don't want to say it was a negative, but my approach to it was very negative, was very like, you're not good enough, do better. Really just sort of harsh self-criticism all the time, and not going, okay, now we need to work on this. And that was better. Still not perfect, but better. Let's work on it again tomorrow. Yeah. And because I feel like in my mind, in my 20s, there was still this end game that you got to, like, oh, I just have to get this together and I'll be good.
Yeah.
And then I think the best thing about being at North Texas was I finally realized in my late 20s that there was no good. There was only better than you were yesterday. And that just keeps going until you die. Yeah. As long as possible. I mean, it's not a for sure, but the goal is what can I do today slightly better than I did yesterday? And then the best part for me is when that started to spill over from music to life. Like how can I be a better person? How can I be more true to who I think I am than I was yesterday? What book can I read that'll give me a new insight into who I want to be tomorrow? How can I change my lifestyle so that I'll feel better when I wake up in the morning? And all, there's a feedback loop, as you know, like between taking care of the person and taking care of the musician. And they help each other. Like when I'm working on music and feeling good about myself, that makes it a lot easier to, get up maybe an hour earlier in the morning and go to the gym, even if I don't want to. Yeah. And getting up an hour earlier and going to the gym, even if I don't want to, makes it easier to then sit down and go, okay, there's this piece of music that I've been avoiding because I feel like it scares me. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really tackle it. And I'm just going to face all the things I can't do as well as I like. And I'm going to do it the best I can, and then that's it. And then at this time of day, I'm going to stop being a musician. I'm going to go back to being a human, and I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go for a hike, or I'm going to go, buy some food and cook a good meal, or all those things. They feed each other, and just figuring that out, because as you know, I know you know this. It's because of what we do. It's really easy to just be, well, I get up and I do music for 16 hours, and then I crawl into, have a drink or two and crawl into bed, try to sleep, get up and just do it again. But, that only works for so long. And I think with me, that I was starting to crater a little bit in my mid to late 20s, and going to North Texas was the sort of reboot that I needed to sort of go, oh, wait a minute, let's try some different stuff here. And that's a process that I carry on to this day, honestly. So it was a great time for me. And being around, you were down there at the time. Norah was there. Yeah. Zach, Bill Campbell, who I just saw recently.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him, but I see him on Facebook.
Yeah, he's doing, and he's still the same guy, but he's one of those guys where he's a much more evolved version of the person he was at North Texas. And you sort of see the people, like being around people like that, where you learn a lot. And it sort of teaches you that, your ego is not healthy right now, and it's getting in your way, and you're listening to a lot of voices in your head that you shouldn't be listening to right now. And that was a great experience for me, going to that school. So.
I think everybody we go through that because music is so tied into who we are as beings. Like, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's something we carry with us all day.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're sleeping.
Sometimes.
Being facetious, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea that, I mean, I share a similar thing where when I was 17, and I don't need to go into details, but I had to relearn how to play the saxophone, you know?
Wow.
And so I went through the same thing. Like, I was like learning the upright for me when I was 17. And I think that process, everybody should go through learning something that's difficult later in life.
Yeah.
Because it teaches you how to learn something. Because you can learn something when you're younger, but there's that energy and that youthfulness that you don't have when you're in your 20s.
That's right.
You know, and I think that everyone should do that. And I think that that's a very important thing, so that if there's other things that they can translate that to. But then I also think that for me, that happened, but that wasn't a journey of a person. It sounded like you had those together. And I think that's beautiful. I just went through that journey in the last 3 years of translating that into learning how to be a better person. And these things you're talking about.
Yeah.
You got all those things. And that's just a recent thing for me. So having those happen at the same time, that's intense, dude.
It was a lot. I mean, I definitely think back to that time and go, wow, I hope I never have to go through something quite that hard ever again.
That's a lot to carry.
And I'm super grateful that I did.
Yeah.
It was kind of the perfect time of life, though, because I was old enough to know, okay, something's got to happen.
Yeah.
And young enough to actually still be able to do it. Like, it was an awful lot of reprogramming going on upstairs for me in those 2.5, 3 years. Like, it was a lot of, sort of fundamentally rebuilding, like taking, sort of like gutting the building that was kind of starting to fall down and just keeping the shell and rebuilding the inside and with a properly designed floor plan, let's say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because and at the same time, I mean, as weird as it is to sound, I'm kind of grateful that my head was in such a weird place in my 20s, because it drove me to work way harder on just the technique side of things than I probably would have otherwise. Like, I became a fanatic about technique because it was something I could control. And having that toolkit, just that physical toolkit now, I'm super grateful for it, because, I feel like I've sort of built good habits. And just so I've been mostly injury free, thank goodness. So occasionally it'll be like, oh, looks like I'm having some back problems, so I got to get a mirror and figure out why. And it's because I'm standing like this, and got to remember to stand like this now, and little things like that. But in terms of
and you can always access that because they're there. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Learn how to do it right.
Yeah, man. Exactly. I'm just very grateful that I went through that period of time where I was so neurotic and unhappy. Because it gave me a toolkit that I'm very grateful to have now. But I'm also glad that before I went too much further along life, I stopped and said, this isn't really a holistic way to live. This is just a way to get good at this one particular thing at the detriment of almost everything else. And fortunately, I pulled out of that and was like, okay, let's sort of let's round this off now. But at the same time, having that sort of those hours and hours and hours and hours in the practice room means that I could, when I wanted to learn something new, there was a lot of the work that was already done. And now it was just a mental game of, how do I internalize this? Not how do I get my hands to do it? Because they'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And being so out of control with the journey in your mind, having that control is so important, and how it manifested for you in technique. That's really beautiful.
It is. I mean, I am great. It could have been a lot worse. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? There's a lot more self-destructive things I could have done instead than just obsessively practice. So,
yeah, I think that looking at the different journeys, having something that you can be in control of while you're going through those mental habit breakings, I think that's important. I think for me, it's running. It was running. Like, that was the place that I would go to where, okay, I can control how good I get at this.
Yeah.
And I think I think you need that, because you're so out of control, because you're changing your reactions to things. You're changing the way that you look at the world. You're changing your relationships. You're doing difficult things. You're saying the word no more. You're doing things that people don't expect from you, and they don't like that.
Nope. They really don't
like that.
No. No, but having that thing that you can retreat to is very important.
Yeah, and for you, having it in your hands and having that technique, that's beautiful. I've never thought of it, all of that in that manner.
Yeah.
That you need that control because you are so out of control because it is so different.
Yeah.
You're changing you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But there's something you can come back to. It's like I may no longer understand my reactions to certain things. I may be still trying to figure some stuff out that I've never thought about before, but I know that when I sit down, I can still play this thing.
Yeah.
That
I got this.
That I spent a lot of time being able to play, and I can still do it. I have that. That's solid. That's something I can rely on.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff that you work on.
Yeah.
And it's this music thing is a pretty interesting journey.
It is, and it's like you talk about building the house out of the shell. It's like it's like if you're flipping houses. After you do the first one, the second one's a little easier.
Yeah.
And the third one's a lot easier.
Well, it's experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Everything gets easier with experience because a lot of what makes new things difficult is the part of your brain that goes, maybe you can't do this.
Yeah.
But once you've done it, it's like, well, clearly I can. I'd like to do it better, but I know I can do it now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And you start, and when you look at your brain, you start recognizing those things. And you're like, okay, well, and we talk about feedback loops too. It's like, okay, now I know how to get out of them, but I'm just going to get out of them sooner. Or I'm going to not think of that sooner. I'm going to react faster. Yeah. I'm going to do this differently.
Yeah.
I think I know that personally my next thing is, and I'm working on it, it has to do with music too, is that in that fight or flight situation. It's like recognizing your head is there, you're in a fight or flight place, and fight or flight place. I said fight or fight.
I know.
Pick one.
Yeah.
Fight or flight place. And you're like... you can pull yourself out. You're like, you know things are firing, and you want to react a certain way.
Yeah.
And you just kind of sit back and you just feel it and you let it dissipate.
Yeah.
But knowing that you've been in feedback loops in other ways, and especially in a musical situation too, where you want to react in a certain way, it's cool to sit back and go, well, no, I'm going to react this way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can translate that into production, being in a production setting.
Yep.
You can translate that into a songwriting session. I mean, there's so many other ways that you can put that. And once you've learned the skill, that skill just kind of has little branches.
Absolutely. It's like the difference between what the hell is going on and, oh, you again.
Yeah. Totally.
It's the difference between I don't know what's happening, I don't understand this, to, oh, it's this thing. Okay, well, then I'll do this. And I know it's going to be okay because it was the last 15 times it happened, so it's going to be fine this time too.
Yeah, it's creating new grooves.
Yeah, I think ultimately all that stuff leads you back to a feeling of ultimately it's all going to be okay. I know I got this. And like what we were talking about with sessions, the same deal. Like I know at some point there's going to be a bass part that everyone's going to be happy with.
Yeah.
Might not happen the first take, might not happen the second take, but probably within the first 5 takes there's going to be a take that everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's good."
Yeah.
And I know that because it's been that way for years. Mm-hmm. And whereas the first couple times you go in there, it's like, what if I can't do this? What if I make a fool out of myself? All those little blah, 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 blah voices.
Yeah.
And then what? Experience. Mm-hmm. Experience and being present teaches you that, nope, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And that's when you can really start enjoying stuff.
You are so bang on. That's exactly
Thanks,
it, man. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could sit here and probably talk for another 2 more hours, but let's do another one of these at some point.
Anytime, dude. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you're in Nashville.
Well, it's nice to have an excuse to, get caught up with an old friend and just record it.
Yeah, exactly. I think the words that come out of your mouth, people need to hear those words.
Oh,
that's the most important thing.
Well, thank you for doing this podcast. Likewise. I mean, again, I listened to a few episodes to get ready for this, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, there's some really beautiful people that the world needs to hear from, and it's so awesome that there's a venue that's easy.
Yeah,
that we can sit down and we can have coffee and just talk.
Oh, the coffee is so good. Anyone who ever is going to end up doing this podcast, I'm just going to say, make sure you get a cup of this coffee because it's fantastic.
You can literally listen to the podcast that I've done, and you can hear the brain just start functioning at a higher level.
Oh yeah,
it starts taking off. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if we did this podcast for about 24 hours straight, we'd probably have world peace sorted by the end of it.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that need new roast for sure.
Oh my God.
Anyway, thanks for doing this, sir.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Peace.
Watch this heavy heart of mine turn this water into wine. Light your match and let it glow, so I know my way home. One more game of tic-tac-toe. You be X and I'll be you. Fall in love like dominoes, then I'll come back home. If I can't find you, go get lost in the simple things. Might I remind you, chase your tail and dream those dreams. One more glass to set me free. Forget right past what's in front of me. I'll be fine, they tell me so, 'cause I know my way